I recently faced a dog owner's worst nightmare. The HOA president sprayed my service dog in the face, then tried to have him labeled as dangerous and put down. And her reason? She said he was barking too much. Funny thing is, the only thing that got tested that day was my willpower not to ruin her entire existence. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Miles Corrigan. I used to handle dogs who could find a bomb in a sandstorm. Now I handle Buddy, a golden retriever whose most dangerous mission is chasing squirrels away from the bird feeder. He's my service dog, helps with the noise in my head. The quiet in our little house in the suburbs was a peace I'd earned, a peace I thought I had. But peace in a place like this comes with a rule book. And the rule book has a name, Carolyn Vance. She was the president of our homeowners association. That meant she was the queen of beige siding, the commander of lawn height, and the grand marshal of acceptable mailbox designs. To her, a blade of grass over 2 inches was an act of rebellion. Buddy and I were on our morning walk. The sun was up. The sprinklers were doing their rhythmic dance. It was calm. Buddy was sniffing a particularly interesting patch of grass near Mrs. Hemlock's prize-winning roses. He was on his leash, right by my side. He wasn't bothering a soul. Then a delivery truck backfired down the street. It was a loud, sharp crack, like a rifle shot. My shoulders went tight. My breath caught in my chest. Buddy felt it instantly. He let out a single, sharp bark. It wasn't aggressive. It was a warning. His way of saying, "I'm here, boss. I've got you." It's what he's trained to do. He grounds me. He pressed his shoulder into my knee, deep pressure on cue. My breathing came back. That one bark was enough. Carolyn Vance's front door flew open. She marched out onto her perfectly manicured lawn like a general reviewing her troops. She wore a pink floral top and visor that seemed permanently attached to her forehead. Her face was pinched, her eyes narrow. "Miles Corrigan," she snapped. Her voice could cut glass. "You cannot control that animal." I took a slow breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they teach you. "He's a service dog, Carolyn." He was startled. "He is a menace," she declared to the whole empty street. "He is constantly barking, threatening the peace of this community." This was a lie. Buddy was quieter than most of the yappy little purse dogs on our block. He barked maybe twice a week, but Carolyn had decided he was a problem. And when Carolyn decided something, the truth didn't matter much. "He barked once," I said, my voice low and even. "We're leaving." I gave a gentle tug on Buddy's leash. We turned to go. But Carolyn wasn't done. She had an audience now. A few neighbors were peeking out their windows. Gus was watering his petunias and pretending not to watch. Carolyn saw it as her stage. "This is your final warning, Mr. Corrigan. This community has standards." Word was the HOA audit hit Friday. Carolyn needed a win. I was handy. Suddenly, I saw a flash of movement. A police car cruising slowly down the street. It was Officer Holt and Officer Reyes. They did regular patrols. Carolyn's eyes lit up. She saw her chance. She waved them down. The cruiser pulled over to the curb with a soft squeal of brakes. A second unit rolled in behind them. 2 more officers stepped out to observe. "Officers," Carolyn said, her voice dripping with false panic. "Thank heavens you're here. This man's vicious animal just lunged at me." My blood ran cold. "That's not true," I said, my voice hard as steel. We were walking away. Holt got out of the car. He looked tired. He knew Carolyn. Everybody did. "What's the problem here, folks?" Carolyn launched into a dramatic tale. She painted Buddy as a ravenous beast, straining at the leash, frothing at the mouth. She made it sound like he was a wolf, and I was a careless owner. I stood there, silent, holding Buddy's leash. He sat patiently by my leg, his tail giving a slow, uncertain thump against the pavement. He looked up at me, confused. "What did I do wrong, Dad?" his eyes were asking. I just kept my hand on his head, a steady pressure to reassure him. Holt and Reyes listened, their faces impassive. They were just trying to get through another call. They didn't want paperwork. They didn't want a scene. They wanted Carolyn to go back inside her perfect house and leave them alone. "Ma'am," Holt said with a sigh, "it's a dog on a leash. He seems calm now." "Now," Carolyn shrieked, "he's only calm because you're here. He needs to be put on the dangerous dog registry. He needs to be muzzled." The officers exchanged a look. This was going nowhere. That's when it happened. While the cops were looking at each other, while my attention was on them, Carolyn took a step forward. She had a small canister in her hand. It looked like a can of hairspray. Before I could react, she aimed it at Buddy's face and pressed the button. A thick, misty spray shot out. It hit Buddy right in the eyes. He yelped, a sound of pure pain and confusion that ripped through my soul. He stumbled back, shaking his head, pawing frantically at his face. He whined, a high, desperate sound. I dropped to my knees beside him. Buddy. Hey, buddy. It's okay. My training kicked in. I checked his eyes. They were red, tearing up. The smell hit me. Not pepper spray, something else. Chemical, bitter, and sharp, like ammonia mixed with cheap perfume. My rage was a white-hot fire. I stood up slowly. I turned to face Carolyn. The world narrowed to the space between us. The cops, the houses, the morning sunit all faded away. There was only her smug, triumphant face. What did you just do? I asked. My voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. The two officers snapped to attention. They saw the look in my eyes. They had seen that look before in other places, on other men. I was defending myself, Carolyn said, holding up the canister. It's just citronella spray. Perfectly harmless. Harmless. Buddy was still whining, trying to rub his face on the grass. Officer Reyes put a hand on my arm. Sir, let's just calm down. Reyes passed me a small saline bottle from his kit. Flush his eyes. Now. I did. She just assaulted my service animal, I said, not taking my eyes off Carolyn. In front of you. Holt walked over to Carolyn. Ma'am, you can't do that. You need to give me that canister. Reyes keyed his radio. Control. Note. Interfering with a service dog can be a crime. We're bagging that can as evidence. Holt sealed it and clipped the tag. Carolyn handed it over, a scowl on her face. Holt slid the can into an evidence bag and logged the time. Later, the lab report would show it wasn't just citronella. It contained capsaicin concentrate. He is the problem here, officer. I am the victim. I pulled out my phone. I took a picture of Carolyn. I took a picture of the officers. I took a picture of Buddy, his eyes swollen and weeping. I was documenting, creating a record. My mind was already shifting from anger to strategy. The fight wasn't here on the curb. She had made sure of that by doing it in front of the police. She had dared the system to stop her. And the system just sighed and asked everyone to calm down. The officers took our names. They wrote a few notes. They told Carolyn to go inside. They told me to take my dog home and maybe use a different route next time. Holt said, Animal control has jurisdiction on animal incidents. We'll document and forward. They treated it like a schoolyard spat, but I knew what it was. It was a declaration of war. As I led Buddy home, his body still trembling, I knew this was just the beginning. Carolyn Vance wanted a fight. She had no idea who she just picked one with. The rest of the day was a blur of quiet fury. I flushed Buddy's eyes with cool water, murmuring to him the whole time. He was a soldier, my boy. He took it without complaint, but the trust in his eyes was replaced with a flicker of confusion and pain. It broke my heart. Every whimper he made was a hot poker against my soul. I spent hours researching citronella spray. While not as potent as pepper spray, it can cause severe irritation, respiratory distress, and in some cases, lasting psychological trauma to a dog. Carolyn called it harmless. I called it what it was, assault. I filed a report online with the local police department, detailing the incident with cold, hard facts. I attached the pictures I took. I knew it would likely go nowhere, buried in a digital pile of neighborhood disputes. But it was a step, a piece of the record. You build a case one brick at a time. The next morning, the real escalation came. It arrived in a white van with the county seal on the side. Animal control. I saw it pull up through my living room window. My stomach turned to a block of ice. Buddy, lying on his mat, lifted his head. He could sense my tension. A man in a khaki uniform walked up my driveway. He was holding a clipboard. He looked official and tired of his job. I met him at the door before he could knock. Miles Corrigan? He asked. I am, I said. My voice was flat, empty. I'm Officer Vargas with Animal Control. We've received a report concerning your golden retriever. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He was staring at the clipboard. A report. I said. Let me guess. From Carolyn Vance. The report states that your dog, identified as Buddy, bit a child yesterday, he said, reading from the paper. The words hit me like a physical blow. A child. There was no child. There was never a child. It was just me, Buddy, Carolyn, and then two cops. It was a lie. A vicious, calculated lie. That's impossible, I said. My dog was with me the entire time. He didn't bite anyone. There wasn't even a child present. Officer Vargas finally looked up. He had the weary eyes of a man who heard the same story every day. Sir, I'm just here to do my job. We have a sworn statement from a witness. A witness? My mind raced. Who would lie for her? Gus, one of her little HOA cronies. The report claims the bite happened just before the police arrived. The child was supposedly rushed home by their mother before the officers got there. It was a neat little story, a story designed to be impossible to disprove on the spot. It explained why the cops didn't see anything. It created a ghost, a phantom victim. "This is a fabrication," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I was struggling to contain. "This is retaliation from my HOA president because she has a grudge against me and my service dog." "I understand, sir," Vargas said, though it was clear he didn't. "But procedure is procedure. A bite report involving a child requires mandatory action. Your dog must be quarantined for 10 days. "Quarantined where?" I asked, dreading the answer. "At the county shelter." "The shelter?" "A place of concrete floors, incessant barking, and the smell of fear. A place that would undo years of Buddy's training and shatter his sense of security. It was a death sentence for a dog like him." "No," I said. The word was final. "He's a task-trained service animal under the ADA. He stays with me." Officer Vargas sighed. He flipped a page on his clipboard. "I can see his rabies vaccination is current and you're a trained handler. That gives you one option. You can quarantine him at home, but there are strict conditions." He listed them off. Buddy had to be confined to the house and a securely fenced yard at all times. No walks, no contact with any other animals or people outside the household. And a large, bright orange sign, which he handed to me, had to be posted on my front door. It read in big black letters, "Dangerous animal. My home, my sanctuary, marked like a plague house." "That's not the worst part, Mr. Corrigan," he said, his voice softening for the first time. He seemed to finally grasp that I wasn't some reckless owner. He pointed to a line at the bottom of the form. "Because of the nature of the accusation, unprovoked bite on a childa formal hearing is automatically scheduled. The burden of proof will be on you to demonstrate that your dog is not a danger to the community." My blood ran cold. "And if I can't? If the complaint is upheld," he said, looking away again, "the standard order is humane euthanasia." There it was, the endgame. This wasn't just about fines or rules anymore. Carolyn Vance wanted to kill my dog. "When is the hearing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "It's not a formal court hearing, sir. It's an administrative review. They're backlogged. It will be scheduled in a few weeks." A few weeks. It felt like a lifetime. But then he delivered the final, crushing blow. "However, we have an accelerated process for cases deemed high risk. The complainant has filed for an emergency destruction order, citing the dog's alleged history of aggression. An order requires supervisor review and a magistrate signature. It's rare, but it exists." "History?" "He has no history. According to Mrs. Vance's statement, he does. That's all they need to file the motion. An animal control supervisor will review the case file and make a preliminary decision. You have 24 hours to submit any evidence you have to the contrary. If you don't, and the supervisor signs off on the emergency order, we'll be back tomorrow to take the animal. 24 hours. 24 hours to disprove a lie. 24 hours to find a ghost child who never existed and prove he wasn't bitten. 24 hours to save Buddy's life." The officer handed me a piece of paper with a case number and an email address on it. "I'm sorry, sir. My hands are tied." He turned and walked back to his van, leaving me standing in my doorway with a death sentence in one hand and a quarantine sign in the other. I looked back inside. Buddy was watching me, his head cocked, his tail still. He didn't know the clock was ticking. He just knew his dad was scared and angry. I closed the door and leaned against it. The cool would a poor substitute for the spine I needed. 24 hours. The mission had begun. At 12:11 a.m., my motion light clicked on. 2 shadows moved at my gate. I slipped to the porch, silent. Sprinklers hissed to life and misted the sidewalk. The figures yelped and jumped back. "Clipboards, HOA polo shirts. Post it fast," one whispered. "Carolyn wants the whole block done." I stepped into the light. Evening. They froze. One was the Balloon Man board guy, cheeks red. The other I knew from the pool committee. "What are you posting?" I asked. "Emergency Pet ID Ordinance," she said. "Takes effect today." "It hasn't been voted on," I said. "And you're taping it to my door during a quarantine." I raised my phone and filmed their flyer. It had the HOA logo, a fake, effective immediately, and Carolyn's typed name. No motion number, no date. Balloon Man swallowed. "We were just told." "By who?" They didn't answer. They walked off fast, shoes squeaking on wet concrete. I saved the video and the flyer. Evidence is best when it's still dripping. The enemy is a woman in a pink floral top with a bed of lies. The quarantine sign felt like a brand. I stuck it to the front door with a piece of tape, the bright orange a screaming accusation to every car that passed. Dangerous animal. The words were a lie, but they were a powerful one. My home was no longer a refuge. It was a prison. Buddy whined at the back door, wanting his afternoon walk. I couldn't take him. I watched him pace, confused and anxious, and my resolve hardened into something cold and sharp. I wasn't just going to defend. I was going to attack. My first priority was evidence. The truth. Carolyn's story was a house of cards, but a strong wind wouldn't be enough to knock it down. I needed a wrecking ball. I needed video. My neighborhood was a fortress of doorbell cameras and security systems. Someone had to have captured the incident. I grabbed a notepad and a pen. I drew a map of the street, marking my house, Carolyn's house, and the spot where the confrontation happened. I identified 5 houses with a direct or partial line of sight. Mrs. Hemlock across the street, the Patels next door, the house on the corner, Gus, and one more 2 doors down. My methodical training from my old life kicked in. You don't charge into a field without knowing the terrain. This was my field now. The clock was a constant tick-tock in the back of my mind. 23 hours left. I started with the Patels. They were a young couple, usually friendly. I rang their doorbell. I could see them through the peephole, a brief shadow, then whispers. It took them a full minute to open the door. Mr. Patel cracked it open just enough to see me. "Hey, Miles," he said, his voice nervous. "Everything okay?" "Not really," I said, keeping my tone level. "You may have seen the confrontation with Carolyn yesterday, and you might see the sign on my door today. She's filed a false report claiming Buddy bit a child. Animal control has given me a 24-hour deadline. I need your help. Your doorbell camera points right at the street. I need the footage from yesterday morning." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked over my shoulder at my house, at the orange sign. He was scared. "Oh man, I don't know, Miles. We try to stay out of the HOA politics. Carolyn, she can make things really difficult." "Difficult," I said, a dangerous edge to my voice. "They're threatening to kill my dog based on a lie. How difficult do you think she's making things for me?" He swallowed hard. "Look, I'll check. But the thing is, our subscription might have lapsed. It might not have saved this video. I'll let you know." It was a lie, a flimsy excuse. He was shutting the door on me. He was choosing the path of least resistance. He was choosing Carolyn. Next, I went to Mrs. Hemlock. She was an older woman, always working in her garden. She had seen the whole thing. I knew she had. She opened the door, her face a mask of sympathy. "Oh, Miles, you poor dear. I saw that awful woman go after your sweet Buddy. It was just terrible." Hope surged in my chest. "Mrs. Hemlock, that's great. Do you have a security camera? Anything that might have recorded it?" Her smile faltered. "A camera? Oh heavens, no. I don't trust those newfangled things. All that business with the internet. No, dear. I just have my eyes." "Would you be willing to give a statement then, to animal control? To the police? Just tell them what you saw. That there was no child? That she sprayed him for no reason." The light in her eyes died. She wrung her hands. "Oh, I couldn't. I'm an old woman. I don't want any trouble. Carolyn Vance, she heads the Architectural Review Committee. My new garden shed, it's not quite up to code. She's been letting it slide. If I were to get on her bad side," she trailed off. Fear. It was a poison Carolyn had seeded throughout the entire neighborhood. She had everyone tangled in a web of petty regulations and the threat of fines. They were all too scared to stand up for the truth because it might cost them a few dollars or a nasty letter. Disgust coiled in my gut. 22 hours left. I tried the house on the corner. No answer. I tried the one 2 doors down. A renter. They said their landlord handled the security system and they didn't have access. Another dead end. My last hope was Gus. His house was directly across from Carolyn's. His camera had the perfect angle. Gus was a strange man. He spent most of his time polishing his oversized pickup truck and complaining about property taxes. He answered the door with a rag in his hand. "Corrigan," he grunted. Saw the sign. Nasty business. "Gus, I need your help," I said, cutting to the chase. "Your camera faces her house. It must have seen everything. I need the video." He shifted his weight, avoiding my gaze. He looked at his truck. He looked at the sky. He looked everywhere but at me. "Don't know," he said. "Camera's been acting up. On the fritz." "On the fritz," I repeated, my voice flat. "Since when?" "Since yesterday," he mumbled. I glanced up. Its status light was solid green. It was the most pathetic lie I had ever heard. I looked him dead in the eye. My patience was gone. "You and I both know that's not true, Gus. She got to you, didn't she? What did she promise you? To overlook the oil stain on your driveway? To approve that gaudy satellite dish you want to install?" He flinched. I had hit a nerve. "You stay out of my business," he snarled. "I saw that dog of yours. It's a beast. Good riddance, I say." He slammed the door in my face. I stood on his porch, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to break the door down. I wanted to shake him until his teeth rattled, but I couldn't. That's what Carolyn wanted. She wanted me to become the monster she claimed I was. I took a deep breath, then another. I walked back to my house, the street feeling hostile and alien. Every curtained window felt like an eye judging me. The orange sign on my door mocked me. I had nothing. No witnesses, no video. The walls were closing in, and the clock was ticking louder than ever. By early afternoon, I drove to animal control. Buddy stayed on place inside the front window, eyes on me. It cut deep, but rules were rules. The lobby smelled like bleach and worry. A woman with steel gray hair looked up from a screen. Nameplate, Supervisor Chun. Mr. Corrigan? She asked. Yes, ma'am. I set a folder on the counter. Photos, the lab intake receipt for the spray can, the flyer I took at midnight. I'm submitting this for the case file. She scanned the pages. Useful. But if you tell me you hacked anything, I can't touch it. I didn't, I said. A witness is preparing a sworn affidavit today. Her eyes softened a notch. All right. The emergency destruction order is in review. If I get credible counter-evidence by midnight, I can hold it for the magistrate. No promises. Midnight. I repeated. She lowered her voice. And Mr. Corrigan, I'm a dog person. I don't like being used by liars. Me either, I said. We understood each other. I sat at my kitchen table, the silence in the house thick with dread. Buddy rested his head on my knee, his brown eyes full of a trust one felt I was failing. 20 hours left. My phone buzzed. It was an email. The subject line read, Official notice from the Greenfield Meadows Homeowners Association. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. It was a formal letter plastered with the HOA logo. It was a summary of my violations. It listed failure to control an aggressive animal, creating a public nuisance, and verbally threatening the HOA president. Another lie stacked on top of the first. Carolyn wasn't just trying to kill my dog. She was trying to erase me from the neighborhood. The letter detailed the fines. $500 for the aggressive animal charge, $250 for the nuisance complaint, another $500 for the verbal threat. A total of $1,250 due immediately. But that wasn't the worst part. I read the final paragraph, and the air left my lungs. Due to the severity, the HOA will seek an injunction, fines, and a lien that could lead to foreclosure for non-payment. Foreclosure. They were aiming to force me out with injunctions, fines, and liens. The home I bought with the money I saved over 20 years of service. The quiet place I had come to heal. It was a coordinated attack, a pincer movement. Animal control was coming for my dog. The HOA was coming for my home. They wanted to leave me with nothing. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. It was a dark, cold tide pulling me under. For a moment, I considered giving up. Maybe I could find a rescue that would take Buddy somewhere far away. Maybe I could just pack my bags and leave this whole nightmare behind. I was tired, world-weary. I had fought enough battles in my life. I didn't know if I had another one in me. Buddy nudged my hand, whining softly. He bumped my hand twice, our reset signal, then leaned until the noise in my head eased. He felt my despair. He was trying to do his job, trying to pull me back from the edge. I looked down at him, at his unwavering loyalty. He had saved my life more times than I could count, in ways that had nothing to do with bombs or bullets. He had pulled me out of the darkness of my own mind. He was my family, my responsibility. The core question echoed in my thoughts. How far will a man go to defend his own? The despair receded, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They thought they could bury me in paperwork and threats. They thought a few scared neighbors and a mountain of fines would make me break. They had made a tactical error. They had cornered me. And a cornered man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. I stood up and started pacing. My mind, which had been clouded with fear, began to clear. I started thinking like a soldier again. Methodical, protective, gritty. I analyzed the enemy. Carolyn was the commander, but she wasn't acting alone. The violation letter and lien threat said the board had voted. She had her cronies. The neighbors were civilian assets, neutralized by fear. The police and animal control were neutral forces, bound by protocol, and susceptible to manipulation. Her strategy was shock and awe. Overwhelm me on all fronts until I surrendered. My strategy had to be different. I couldn't win a direct assault. I needed intelligence. I needed to find her weak point. I needed to go behind enemy lines. There was one person I knew who could do that. A man who owed me his life, a debt he constantly tried to repay, much to my annoyance. My best friend, Leo. We had served together. I was his handler. He was our unit's tech wizard. He could make a satellite dish out of a tin can and a roll of duct tape. Now he worked in cybersecurity for some big corporation, doing things I didn't understand with words I couldn't pronounce. I picked up my phone. It had been months since we last spoke. We weren't the kind of friends who needed constant contact. Our bond was forged in sand and fire. It didn't need maintenance. He answered on the second ring. Corrigan, to what do I owe the honor? Did you finally figure out how to use that smartphone I sent you? His voice was the same, laced with dry sarcasm. I need your help, Leo, I said. No preamble. The humor in his voice vanished instantly. What is it? What's wrong? I laid it all out. Carolyn, the spray, the fake bite report, the 24-hour deadline, the eviction notice. I told him everything, my voice a low, steady monotone. I was giving a field report, facts, figures, objectives. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Miles, he finally said, and his voice was grim. This woman is a piece of work. That's an understatement, I replied. They're trying to kill my dog, Leo. No, he said, his voice hardening. They are not. Not while I'm on watch. What do you need? Intel, I said. This whole thing, the bite report, the emergency order, the immediate HOA action, it's too coordinated. It feels planned. She must have communicated with someone. The witness, the HOA board. There has to be a trail. An email trail. Leo finished for me. You want me to get into the Greenfield Meadows HOA server? Can you do it? I asked. I heard the sound of typing. Fast, furious. Their website is a joke built on some cheap template. Security looks like it was designed by a high school intern. Give me 30 minutes. Leo, if you get caught, then I'll blame it on the Russians, he quipped. Just keep your head down. Don't do anything stupid. Don't talk to anyone. Let me work. I'll call you back. He hung up. I was no longer alone. I had air support. The fight was still mine, but I had an eye in the sky. All I could do now was wait. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. I cleaned my kitchen. I organized my garage. I did anything to keep my hands busy, to stop my mind from spiraling. Buddy watched me, his head tilting with every move. 19 hours left. Tick-tock. My doorbell rang. A short guy in a sun hat stood on my step, holding a walkie and a grin. Name's Vince. I'm 2 streets over. Ham radio nerd. K8VNC, he said, the call sign like it was a badge. Heard the rumble. My scanner lit up last night. Whole lot of Carolyn on the air. I blinked. You skin the neighborhood? Public bands only, he said fast. Anyway, you're going to that meeting, right? Internet can, mysteriously die around here. He winked. I've got a battery pack, a hot spot, and a trunk full of cables that would make NASA weep. I couldn't help but smile. You showing up to a fight with wires, Vince? Sir, he said, deadly serious. I show up to everything with wires. He handed me a card. It had a lightning bolt drawn in Sharpie and his number. If things go dark, call me. I'll make light. As he left, he whistled from my porch cam. Smile, Carolyn, he said to the empty street and ambled off. My phone rang. It was Leo. I'm in, he said, his voice tense with excitement. It was pathetic. Their password was Meadows 123. I'm insulted. What did you find? I asked, my heart pounding. Oh, it's a treasure trove, my friend. A cesspool of suburban tyranny. But I found what you're looking for. Send items from one Carolyn Vance. Let's see. I could hear him scrolling. Okay, here we go. Email sent yesterday, 2 hours after the incident with the cops. It's to her assistant, a woman named Amy. Listen to this. He cleared his throat and read in a mocking, nasally voice. Amy, I need you to draft a complaint to animal control immediately. We will state that Corrigan's golden retriever bit a child. Make the child anonymous, a visitor to the neighborhood, to avoid any need for actual records. We need to use the emergency protocol. I want that animal gone by the end of the week. My breath hitched. There it was in black and white. A premeditated conspiracy. There's more, Leo said. She sent another one to the HOA board members, all 3 of them. It details her plan. She calls Buddy a legal liability and me an unstable element. She convinced them that my presence was driving down property values. She pre-wrote the violation notices and the eviction letter. The board members all replied with, sounds good, Carolyn, or whatever you think is best. They're sheep. The final piece was the witness. Did she mention who the witness was? I asked. Better, Leo said. The sworn statement to animal control wasn't from a neighbor. It was from her assistant, Amy. The email chain shows Carolyn bullying her into signing it, threatening her job over it. She told her, you work for me, and your job is to handle my problems. This is a problem. Leo forwarded me the entire email chain. I looked at the words on my screen. The lies, the manipulation, the cold, calculated malice. This was my wrecking ball. Carolyn Vance thought she was untouchable. She didn't know she was fighting a man who had a ghost on his side. A ghost who could walk through digital walls. The clock was still ticking, but for the first time, I felt a sliver of hope. I had the truth. Now I just had to figure out how to use it. The emails were a nuke, but a nuke you can't use without creating massive fallout. I'd tip my lawyer to subpoena the server before Carolyn could wipe it. Admitting I had illegally hacked evidence would get the case thrown out and land Leo in a world of trouble. That was a line I would not cross. My friend had put himself on the line for me. I had to protect him. This meant the emails couldn't be the primary weapon. They had to be the backup, the blackmail, the thing I used if all else failed. My primary target had to be Amy, the assistant, the coerced witness. She was the weak link in Carolyn's chain of command. If I could get her to flip, the whole conspiracy would unravel legally. But how? Pleading with her wouldn't work. Threatening her with the emails might just make her double down, terrified of Carolyn's wrath. I needed leverage. I needed an opportunity. I spent the next few hours in a state of high alert. I watched the street from my window. I needed to understand the rhythm of the neighborhood, the patterns of my enemy. Carolyn left around noon in her pristine luxury SUV. A few minutes later, a younger woman in a sensible sedan pulled up to Carolyn's house. She used a key to let herself in. Amy. She was probably there to water the plants or feed a cat. I watched her for a moment. She looked stressed, her shoulders hunched. She was a prisoner in her own job. I formulated a plan. It was risky. It relied on chance, but it was the only one I had. I put Buddy's leash on. According to the quarantine rules, he couldn't leave the property, but my fenced-in front yard counted as my property. We went outside. I began a meticulous, slow-paced training drill with Buddy right there in the front yard. Basic commands: sit, stay, heel. It gave me a reason to be outside, watching, waiting. It was also good for Buddy, giving him a sense of purpose and routine in the middle of all this chaos. We were out there for maybe 20 minutes when I saw my chance. The side gate to Carolyn's yard was open, and out trotted a small, fluffy white dog. A Bichon Frise. It was yapping excitedly, its tail a blur. It belonged to Amy. I had seen her walking it before. Amy came out a moment later, her phone pressed to her ear. She was distracted, arguing with someone. No, I told her it wasn't true, she was saying, her voice strained. I don't know what else to do. The little dog, seeing its chance for adventure, made a break for it. It shot out of the open gate and headed straight for the street. Amy, still on the phone, didn't notice. My heart leaped into my throat. A car was coming, not fast, but fast enough. It was a delivery van. The driver was looking down at a package on his passenger seat. He wasn't paying attention. There was no time to shout, no time to think. I reacted. Buddy, stay. I commanded. He sat instantly. Buddy never left the yard. I vaulted my low fence in a single, fluid motion. Years of training took over. 3 long strides, and I was in the street. I scooped up the little white dog just as the van swerved. The driver finally looking up, his eyes wide with panic. The tires screeched a foot from where I stood. My heart was pounding. The little dog was trembling in my arms, letting out tiny, frightened yelps. Amy finally saw what had happened. She dropped her phone. Her face went pale with horror. "Oh my God," she whispered, rushing over. "Oh my God, Pippin, are you okay?" I handed the little dog to her. She hugged it close, burying her face in its fur. She was shaking. "He could have been killed," she stammered, looking at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and gratitude. "You saved him. Just keep your gate closed," I said, my voice steady. My adrenaline was starting to fade. I turned to walk back to my yard. "Wait," she called out. I stopped and looked back. She had tears in her eyes. "Why would you do that? After what I did. After what she made me do." Here it was. The opening, the moral crossroads she was standing on. I walked back towards her, stopping a few feet away. "Because it wasn't the dog's fault," I said simply. "And maybe it wasn't entirely yours, either." Her face crumpled. The guilt she had been holding back came pouring out. "She's a monster," she whispered, clutching Pippin so tight he whimpered. "She threatened my job. My mom is sick. I need the insurance." I didn't know what to do. I signed the paper. I lied. "I am so sorry." I looked her in the eye. I saw not an enemy, but another victim. A different kind of victim, but a victim nonetheless. "I have the emails, Amy," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "The ones between you and Carolyn. I know she coerced you. I know this whole thing is a lie." Her eyes widened in shock. She didn't ask how I got them. She just knew it was the truth. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. This was the moment. I could have used the emails to threaten her. I could have been just like Carolyn. But that's not who I am. That's not what this was about. This was about justice, not revenge. "I'm going to give you a choice," I said. "You can continue to live in fear of a woman who would risk your dog's life, while she has you sign a death warrant for mine. Or you can tell the truth. You can help me stop her. Not just for me and for Buddy, but for yourself, and for anyone else she decides to bully." I let the words hang in the air between us. I had saved her dog. I had shown her I knew the truth. And I had offered her a path to redemption instead of a threat. I had given her back the power Carolyn had taken from her. She looked from my face to my house with the ugly orange sign, then down to the little dog still shaking in her arms. I saw the conflict in her eyes, the war between her fear and her conscience. After a long moment, she took a deep, shuddering breath and nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "What do we do?" The tide had just turned. 18 hours left. The plan we hatched was simple and audacious. The HOA had scheduled an emergency meeting for that evening in the community clubhouse. The official agenda, emailed out an hour earlier, was to discuss community safety and pet policy enforcement. It was a sham. The real purpose was to publicly crucify me and rubber stamp the board's decision to evict. Carolyn wanted a public execution. I was going to give her one, just not the one she was expecting. Amy was my inside woman. She told me the meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock. She also told me Carolyn had prepared a binder full of so-called evidence against me, mostly anonymous complaints she had likely written herself. I called Leo. "Change of plans," I said. "I'm not using the emails as a threat. I'm using them as a safety net. I have the witness." She's flipped. I could almost hear him smile through the phone. "Attaboy, Miles. Always find a way to turn their own assets against them. What's the play?" "I'm walking into the lion's den," I told him. "The HOA meeting. But I need you there. I need you to be my tech support and my witness." "Say no more," he said. "I'll be there. And I'll bring a friend." At 6:18 p.m., my router lights died. My phone dropped to SOS. I stepped outside and found the cable at the sidewall sliced clean. "Of course," I muttered. Leo rolled up early, saw the drooping line, and gave a low whistle. Subtle. Vince zipped in behind him in a dented hatchback, tossed the hatch, and revealed a treasure chest of gadgets. "Brought the circus," he said. "You got power?" "Yeah." He suction cupped a small antenna to my window. "We'll hop cell bands. Triple failover." He taped a cord along the trim with blue painter's tape and gave me a look. "It's ugly, but it works." My phone chimed back to life. Leo tested the stream. "We're up." Vince saluted. K8 VNC out. He tripped, recovered, and shot finger guns at the router corpse. "Nice try, gremlins." I checked the time. 6:42. We were still in the fight. At 6:45, we headed for the clubhouse. On the way, Leo briefed me. "Streams live to a private link. I've pinged local news and an animal welfare group. If anyone kills the Wi-Fi, we fail over to cell." World's watching, quietly. We walked into the clubhouse. It was a sterile room with beige walls and uncomfortable folding chairs. About 30 residents were there. I saw the Patels, who wouldn't look at me. I saw Mrs. Hemlock, who gave me a sad, helpless shrug. I saw Gus, who sneered openly. At the front of the room, behind a long folding table, sat Carolyn Vance and her two bored cronies. A man who looked like a deflated balloon and a woman with a permanent scowl. Carolyn's eyes narrowed when she saw me walk in. They narrowed even more when she saw Leo, a stranger, sit down in the back and casually place his phone on the table in front of him, aimed right at her. Two uniformed officers and a sergeant took positions by the door. Standard crowd control for a heated HOA meeting. The property manager had called them after the agenda went out. The clubhouse windows rattled once as a car rolled past, slow. I glanced through the glass and saw Carolyn's SUV crawl by. A teen in the back seat chucked a balloon at the shrub line. It burst. Red paint streaked the mulch like a wound. The sergeant by the door turned his head. "Unit outside. No vandalism," he said into his mic. Carolyn walked in moments later. Cool smile, scented air. I kept my voice even. Cute timing. She didn't look at me. "You shouldn't bring dangerous animals to public buildings, Mr. Corrigan. Buddy's at home, on place," I said. "But you knew that." Her eye twitchy to tell. I filed it away. Gus saw the paint and whispered, "Classy," to nobody. For once, he didn't smirk. Leo leaned close. "Stream caught the balloon," he murmured. "Good," I said. "Let the world see how she decorates." Carolyn rapped the gavel. Her hand shook. The room was already slipping away from her, and she could feel it. This emergency meeting of the Greenfield Meadows Homeowners Association is now in session. The first and only item on our agenda is the clear and present danger posed by the animal residing at 124 Willow Lane. She looked directly at me. Mr. Corrigan, your dog has been designated a dangerous animal by the county. It has viciously attacked a child, and this board has voted unanimously to enforce the bylaws with fines, injunctions, and liens against you. A murmur went through the crowd. This was what she wanted, a quick, clean vote of public support. I stood up. My voice was calm and carried through the room. Excuse me, Mrs. Vance. Before we discuss these sanctions, I'd like to discuss the incident you're referring to. The alleged dog bite. Carolyn's face tightened. There is nothing to discuss. We have a sworn statement from a witness. Do you? I asked, because I'd love to know the name of this child who was bitten and the name of their parents. Surely a police report was filed. A hospital visit. An incident that severe must have generated some kind of official record. The room was silent. People were starting to look at each other. Carolyn's story, so solid a moment ago, was starting to sound thin. The family wishes to remain anonymous, Carolyn snapped. They are renters, and they fear retaliation from you. Retaliation? I said with a small, humorless laugh. I'm the one being evicted. I'm the one whose dog is scheduled to be killed in. I checked my watch. 15 hours. What I fear is a lie. A lie you created. How dare you? She shrieked, her composure cracking. Are you calling me a liar? I am, I said, my voice like ice. And I have proof. I nodded towards the back of the room. Amy, who had slipped in unnoticed, stood up. She was trembling, but her eyes were defiant. All heads turned towards her. Carolyn's face went white. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Amy, Carolyn stammered. What are you doing? I'm telling the truth, Carolyn, Amy said, her voice shaking but clear. There was no child. There was no bite. I was there. Miles Corrigan's dog was on a leash and did nothing. Carolyn Vance sprayed the dog in the face, unprovoked. Then she ordered me to file a false report with animal control. She threatened my job if I refused. She wrote the statement, and she forced me to sign it. A collective gasp went through the room. The deflated man and the scowling woman on the board looked at Carolyn in horror. Gus's jaw was hanging open. Carolyn leaped to her feet. She's lying. She's a disgruntled employee. She's in on it with him. But the dam had broken. The fear she had cultivated for years was being washed away by a flood of truth. I have a sworn, notarized affidavit right here, Amy continued, holding up a piece of paper. And I've already sent a copy to Animal Control and the district attorney's office. Then Leo stood up in the back of the room. And just so everyone is aware, he announced cheerfully, this entire meeting is being live-streamed. The sergeant stepped in. Interfering with a service dog is a crime, and ADA protections apply. Carolyn's face went blank. Leo continued, we have about 500 viewers right now, including reporters from Channel 4 News. Maybe you'd like to repeat your accusations for them, Mrs. Vance. Carolyn looked at the phone in his hand, the small red light indicating it was recording. She looked at the faces of her neighbors, no longer fearful, but filled with contempt and rage. She looked at me. The trap had sprung. Her face, a mask of righteous indignation moments before, crumbled into pure, unfiltered panic. She grabbed her binder and tried to flee the stage, but Mrs. Hemlock, a woman she had terrorized over a garden shed, stood up and blocked her path. The meeting had turned into a mutiny. The power had shifted. Carolyn Vance was done. The fallout from the live-streamed meeting was immediate and catastrophic for Carolyn. Before the meeting was even over, my phone started buzzing with calls from local news reporters. Leo's little broadcast had gone viral in our small city. The story was perfect for the 10 o'clock news, a decorated veteran and his service dog targeted by a power-mad HOA president. The court of public opinion delivered its verdict before a real court ever could. The next morning, I woke up to a different world. The orange quarantine sign was still on my door, a relic of a battle already won. A news van was parked down the street. Instead of glares and whispers, my neighbors gave me waves and thumbs-ups. Gus was scrubbing the oil stain on his driveway with a frantic energy, as if trying to wash away his own complicity. My first official call was from Animal Control. It was a supervisor this time. Her voice was apologetic and professional. Mr. Corrigan, we have received a sworn affidavit from Amy Collins recanting her original statement. In light of this new evidence, and, frankly, the video of your HOA meeting, we are dropping all proceedings against your animal, Buddy. She cited Amy's affidavit, the live stream, and the pending lab report on the spray. The quarantine is lifted, effective immediately. The emergency destruction order has been voided. We sincerely apologize for the distress this has caused. I felt a wave of relief, so powerful my knees went weak. I hung up the phone and knelt down, wrapping my arms around Buddy. We won, Buddy. I whispered into his fur. We won. He just licked my face, his tail thumping a steady, happy rhythm against the floor. The legal battle that followed was swift and decisive. The management company called an emergency recall election. Residents voted the board out, citing gross misconduct. They hired a local law firm to represent me pro bono, mostly as a public relations move to save their own skin. We didn't even need a long, drawn-out fight. We filed a suit against Carolyn Vance personally and the now-defunct HOA board. Our case was built on a mountain of undeniable evidence. Amy's testimony, the live stream video, and with a proper subpoena this time, the emails Leo had uncovered. We stood before a judge a few weeks later. It was a civil court, but the judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, treated the matter with the gravity of a criminal case. Carolyn's lawyer tried to paint me as an unstable veteran and Amy as a liar looking for revenge. It was a pathetic defense. My lawyer calmly presented the facts. He highlighted the premeditated nature of Carolyn's plan, her abuse of power, and her blatant disregard for the law. He made special note of Buddy's status as a service animal, which brought the Americans with Disabilities Act into play. When it was time for the judge to rule, she took off her glasses and looked directly at Carolyn. Mrs. Vance, she began, her voice cold as a winter morning. In my 15 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a textbook case of malicious prosecution and neighborhood terrorism. You used your position of power not to build a community, but to tear it down, to enforce your will through fear and intimidation. She turned her attention to me. Mr. Corrigan, what you and your service animal endured is unconscionable. This court finds in your favor on all counts. The judgment was a hammer blow to Carolyn. The judge voided the HOA fines and the threatened injunction and lien actions. She awarded me damages for emotional distress. But she didn't stop there. Furthermore, the judge announced, her voice rising, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office with a strong recommendation for criminal charges. ADA rights are civil. Your crimes are state charges. Both still count, and your testimony here today under oath borders on perjury. You, Mrs. Vance, have buried yourself in your own lies. The gavel came down with a final, resounding crack. It was over. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been delivered with overwhelming force. Carolyn Vance's downfall was as public as the meeting she had tried to use for my destruction. The judge's harsh words made the front page of the local paper. The district attorney, spurred on by the public outcry and the clear-cut evidence, moved quickly. Carolyn was officially charged with filing a false report to authorities, perjury, and felony animal cruelty for the chemical spray attack. The last I heard, she had sold her house at a loss and moved 2 states away to deal with the mountain of legal bills and the public disgrace. Her name became a cautionary tale in our neighborhood, a synonym for the abuse of petty power. The 2 board members who had enabled her were forced to resign and issue a public apology. They were lucky to escape charges themselves. The old HOA was dissolved and a new one was formed, this time with a board elected by residents who were now fiercely protective of their rights and deeply suspicious of anyone who loved rules a little too much. The first act of the new board was to issue a formal written apology to me and to pay the damages awarded by the court. They also made a sizable donation in Buddy's name to a local veteran service dog organization. Amy, the assistant, found a new job almost immediately. She had become something of a local hero. She had stood up to a bully, and our community respected her for it. She and I became unlikely friends. We'd often see each other when she was walking Pippin, and we'd stop and chat. We were bound by the strange, stressful war we had survived together. My life slid back into a quiet rhythm, but a different quiet. Not the fragile kind, the earned kind. The fear Carolyn planted was gone. Neighbors waved more. People talked on the sidewalks. Even Gus came by with a plate of cookies, mumbling that he'd been wrong and Buddy was a heck of a dog. I took the cookies. I was done carrying grudges. I'd carry Buddy's leash instead. The community wasn't done, either. They said an apology and a donation weren't enough. They wanted to honor the dog who pulled us together. At the town council meeting, I sat with Buddy at my feet and listened. Mrs. Hemlock, the Patels, folks I barely knew. They didn't just praise a dog. They talked about what he stood for: loyalty, courage, steady work done in silence. They said he saved a street from fear and saved his handler from the dark. A week later, we gathered at the small park at the end of our block. The mayor came. News cameras came too, but the mood was light this time. The mayor spoke, then bent and slipped a ribbon over Buddy's neck. A custom medal, the city's civilian service medal. From the crowd, Vince lifted his walkie. K8VNC to T. Mission complete. Requesting belly rubs. Laughter broke the tension. Buddy didn't know about medals. He knew about people being kind. Then the mayor pulled a cord. A new wooden sign swung into view. The old paint was gone. The fresh carving read, Buddy's Park. The crowd cheered. I looked down at my partner. His medal sat a little crooked. His eyes were bright. He was still the same good boy, just with a new place named after him. That evening, when the trucks and cameras were gone, we walked to his park. The light was soft. Buddy sniffed the same trees and trotted the same loop, tail high like always. He hadn't changed. The street had. I sat on a bench and watched a leaf skitter across the path. The question from that bad day came back. How far will a man go to defend his own? Far enough. As far as it takes. Until the fight is won, and home feels like home again. Buddy pressed against my leg and let his head rest on my lap. The metal felt cool through the fabric. I scratched his ear. We stayed there a while, just listening to the wind in the leaves of Buddy's park.